Hello, and welcome to the podcast Buffy and the Art of Story. If you love the Buffyverse and you love creating stories or just taking them apart to see how they work, you're in the right place. Today I'm talking about Angel Season 1, Episode 12, Expecting, where Cordelia discovers she's visibly pregnant only one morning after what she thought was the perfect date, and Angel and Wes strive to help her. If you are looking for episodes about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you can find every episode from Welcome to the Hellmouth and the Harvest to the season finale chosen by scrolling back in this podcast feed, or you can find them on YouTube or on my author website at lisalilly.com. And there's more bonus Buffy content for members of my Patreon community at patreon.com/LisaMLilly. That's patreon.com/LISA, M as in Marie, LILLY. And I am Lisa M. Lilly, author of supernatural thrillers, traditional detective mysteries, and the Writing as a Second Career books for fiction writers. Along with the recap of Expecting, I will talk about the challenges of having a group as a protagonist, whether similar to the last episode, we have any strong themes here, or more recurring images or motifs or language that links scenes together. If any of the characters has strong growth in this episode, why the episode matters to the larger arc of the season, and my rating of the episode on a scale of 0 to 10. As always, there will be no spoilers about Angel, but I do talk about all of Buffy from time to time, so if you have not watched that whole series, proceed with caution. Okay, let's dive into the Hellmouth, or maybe just Los Angeles. Expecting aired the first time January 25, 2000. It was written by Howard Gordon and directed by David Semmel. On streaming, there is a Previously On, which shows Doyle passing the visions on to Cordelia and Cordelia's new apartment, which is haunted by Phantom Dennis. This Previously On adds to my view that the last episode, Somnambulist, was one that was written to sort of drop in almost anywhere early in this season, because obviously here it matters. Doyle matters. And we will see that Cordelia is still dealing with her grief over him, something that was not present in Somnambulist. The episode begins with pretty minor conflict. Usually we have a bit more than this, but it does foreshadow quite a bit of the episode. It's night at the office. Cordelia is dressed up. She puts on lipstick by looking at her reflection in an office window. So she is really startled when Angel comes up behind her, since he does not cast a reflection. She ends up drawing lipstick over half her face and says now she looks like the Joker. And would it kill Angel to hum a tune when he comes up behind someone? Angel says he doesn't hum, and he asks, why is Mrs. Benson under P in the file cabinet? Cordelia says that's an F, and it's under F because the client is from France. Wesley drops in right around then. He was just in the neighborhood patrolling with his new axe and wants to know if they need any help with anything. Maybe Cordelia had a vision, which gets in for anyone who hasn't been watching regularly that Cordelia's visions involve their supernatural work and who they need to fight. However, there aren't any, and Wesley says, well, that's okay because he brought Boggle as well. But Cordelia is going out. Her two very pretty friends arrive. One of them says to Wesley something like, nice axe. He stutters and awkwardly swings the axe, kind of saying, oh, this old thing, and it embeds in the wall. The three women are going to an exclusive trendy club, and her friends tease Cordelia about how it's the third date with fashion photographer Wilson Christopher. Angel takes Cordelia aside and asks why hasn't he met Wilson, but Cordelia does not want Angel giving him the third degree, which, if you remember, he did with her date early in another episode. One of the friends says Cordelia's boss can give her the third degree anytime. Cordelia falls to the floor with a vision. She's behind the desk. Partly, Angel and Wesley stand very close together in front of her to block her from her friend's view. Angel babbles about the club, not really making any sense, and Wesley puts his arm around Angel's shoulder. And one of the friends says to the other, "The good ones are always gay." Cordelia staggers to her feet, and when Angel asks about the client he's supposed to meet, Cordelia says he looks like a giant baby hatching from an egg, and he's got a bad manicure, claw-like. She writes down an address and leaves with her friends. Wesley asks if Angel needs help with the demon. Angel does, and Wesley needs 2 hands to grab his axe out of the wall, and then he falls over. In the next scene, Angel and Wesley burst into an older couple's home. They're just sitting there peacefully watching TV. They break the door and start demanding information about demon spawn. Well, Wesley does that. Angel notices ooze and tentacles from next door, and they apologize. Angel pretends they're looking for termites, and we go to credits. This idea of the baby demon foreshadows the pregnancy theme here and the connection to demons. The talk about Angel giving Wilson the third degree does a bit of foreshadowing as well about how important Wilson is going to be, but also Angel's role in Cordelia's life. On return from the credits, Wesley and Angel fight the baby demon in the correct house. We see it through the shades, so they are mostly shadows fighting, which is probably a way to do some cost savings so you don't have to have this big battle. And it also fits because this fight in itself really is not important. They finally prevail, they're breathing hard, and they talk about how if they had been 5 minutes later, the demon would already have hatched and been out on the town, very hard to stop. Wesley jokes a little about Cordelia sending them to the wrong address, but he is critical of her, saying she's too distracted. Angel defends Cordelia. He says she's young, she's still finding her way, and she's been through a lot, including Doyle's death. I like seeing that reference to Doyle. That makes this episode right away feel like it has more continuity than Somnambulist did. The scene cuts to Cordelia and her friends at a club with lots of beautiful people. One of her friends flirts with the bartender and tips him with money that she gets from her date. Cordelia and Wilson really seem to be connecting. She tells him coming to LA alone with no money was like skydiving without a parachute. And where was that guy who's supposed to welcome you with a guide to how to get fame and fortune? Wilson tells her LA is made to make people feel insecure. She finds it hard to believe that he is insecure given his great career and he's doing what he wants, but he tells her she can see it in the photographs. They're having a really good time, seem to be genuinely enjoying each other's company, and he thanks her for making him not hate dating. She tells him for the first time she doesn't hate LA. This connection between them is what I see as the inciting incident or story spark that gets the main plot rolling. Without it, the other women would be affected, but Cordelia would not be part of the story. At her apartment, Cordelia dims the lights after Wilson comes in, and Phantom Dennis turns them on bright again. Cordelia puts on quiet music. Dennis changes it to a jaunty polka. Cordelia blames it on bad wiring and disappears in the kitchen to make tea. She has already told Wilson because he asks if she lives alone, and she says something like, well, yes, in the sense that I'm the only one actually living who's here, and he's a little puzzled by that response. In the kitchen, Cordelia tells Dennis to back off, don't be jealous. Cordelia and Wilson make love in her bedroom. In the morning, Cordelia wakes up. It's sunny. The clock says 10:47. So she is late for work, and when she takes the covers off, she is appalled because she is very, very pregnant. It looks like she's about 8 months in. This is about 14 minutes into the episode and is the first major plot turn. That is the one that comes from outside the protagonist and spins the story in a new direction and raises the stakes. I have questions about who the protagonist is in this episode, and we'll get to that. But for now, we have been focusing on Cordelia, clearly from outside of her, and it raises the stakes for her. After a commercial, Angel and Wesley go to Cordelia's apartment. Angel's really worried. It's noon. They haven't heard from her. She hasn't returned his calls. Angel says it's not like her, but Wesley thinks maybe it is, being irresponsible, distracted, neglecting her duties. They go into her bedroom and are shocked. She is under the covers. She's sitting there, tearful, very pregnant and distraught. She tells Angel she's ready to wake up now. She tells him what happened, including how nice Wilson was and how he came back to her apartment and everything was great and safe. And she woke up like this. She hasn't tried to call him because she doesn't know what she'd say, and she thinks she's being punished. And we had that theme in Room with a View where Cordelia felt she was punished for having been a bad person. Here it seems to relate to having had sex with someone after only a few dates, although she doesn't specifically say that. Wesley tells her she's not being punished. Angel gets her to dial Wilson's number on speaker. Angel will talk to him, so Cordelia doesn't have to, but the number's disconnected. They tell Cordelia to rest. Angel promises to help her. When she's alone, Dennis gives her a tissue. In the kitchen, Angel and Wesley talk about procreating demons and how the women rarely survive the birth. Angel tells Wesley to take Cordelia for an ultrasound. They need to know what is growing inside her, and she might give birth any minute. Angel is going to go find Daddy. At the Trendy Club, Angel offers the bartender money, saying he recognizes it might be an insult, and he empathizes with the bartender night after night having to deal with jerks who think they can buy anything. The bartender agrees on that point, and Angel says one of those jerks hurt his friend. The bartender finally tells him that the girls bring the pretty and the guys bring the money. They travel in a pack, and Serena decides where they'll hang out and what they'll do. This made me think of Cordelia in high school. The bartender says, "You the boyfriend?" And Angel says, "No, I'm family." The doctor Cordelia sees is shocked that she hasn't had previous pregnancy care. He does an ultrasound and at first says he sees twins, and then he starts saying, no, it's 3 heartbeats, 4 heartbeats. He gets up to 6. He looks very worried. Cordelia asks what's wrong. He tells her he wants to take amniotic fluid. We're right around the middle of the episode. Usually at the midpoint of any story, there is a major reversal, or the protagonist makes a major commitment, or both. We don't exactly see that here, but there are escalations, and you could certainly see that there are at least 6 beings as a pretty big reversal. But Cordelia is already pregnant in one day with some sort of demon offspring, or spawn as they'll call it later, so it doesn't feel like that huge of a shift. Now, though, there's another escalation. Angel knocks on Serena's door and says his name and that he's Cordelia's friend, and can he come in? So this is why we needed Angel to meet Serena in the beginning of the episode, because we've got these rules about vampires having to be invited in, and there'd be no reason for her to invite Angel in if she hadn't met him, or at least it would be much harder to believe. Inside the apartment, it's very dark. Serena is drinking, and she turns around. We see that she too is very, very pregnant, and she's hoping the alcohol will hurt the baby. So this is another escalation. It's not just Cordelia who is pregnant. I'm not sure if this raises the emotional stakes very much, and ultimately we care about the demon plots and the horror plots because we care about the characters. And here, we don't really know Cordelia's friends. There's nothing about them that particularly engages me. They're very pretty. They're kind of funny in the early scene when they're flirting a little bit with Wesley and Angel. But other than Angel saying Serena's name, it is hard for me to remember who's who. There's nothing really distinctive. And so while this escalates, it doesn't feel like that much of an escalation, though we find out later that it is from a plot perspective. The doctor tells Cordelia there's a 0.5% chance of miscarriage when he takes the amniotic fluid, and Cordelia immediately says, "I'll take it." The fluid bubbles in the syringe after he fills it. The nurse drops it and the fluid eats through the floor. The nurse and doctor get out of there fast. Cordelia looks really agitated. Wesley thinks she's afraid, and maybe she is, but what she asks him is if they look healthy. This is a greater escalation because now we have this hint that Cordelia is very concerned about these offspring, which puts her at odds with Angel and Wesley. We know from their conversation that giving birth will kill Cordelia. So it also raises the stakes for her. So maybe this is the true major reversal, though it's a bit beyond the halfway point in the episode. Serena tells Angel she can't reach Jason, who was her date. She didn't know that this would happen to the women, but she knew something wasn't right about these guys. For one thing, their money smelled. She means literally smelled bad. And the guys were always jumpy, but she says everything's fake in LA. After a while, you stop asking questions. Angel asks if she has any family she can call, and she says no. Wilson liked women with no family and few friends. He asked that about Cordelia, and Serena said Cordelia had no one. At Angel's apartment, Wesley tells Cordelia to relax. She realizes he's afraid of what's inside her. She touches her stomach. She says there are 7 children. She can hear them talking, but she's upset because she doesn't know what they're saying. Wesley looks really troubled. She tells him he doesn't know what it's like to be a, quote, partner in creation, unquote. And she knows they're not human, but that could be okay, right? Look at Angel and Doyle. They're not human. And she adds that Doyle was good. Angel arrives in the living room. He and Wesley exchange information. Angel's not sure how many women are pregnant, but there are a number, and both of them think someone might be raising an army. So this is where we find out that the multiple women is also an escalation for the demon plot. Wilson and his buddies hang out in a private gun club. Wesley and Angel both want to terminate the pregnancy without hurting Cordelia, but they need to be ready if there is a birth. They need to be ready to fight the demons. They turn around and see Cordelia. She's standing at the open refrigerator drinking a giant cup of blood. And Angel says, "I don't think I've ever realized just how disgusting that was." Angel tells Wesley to get Cordelia back to bed and maybe order a pizza. At the gun club, Angel sneaks up behind Wilson, who swings around and tells him he shouldn't do that. It's how accidents happen. And he says, too, it's a private club. Angel shouldn't be there. Angel introduces himself, and Wilson says, oh, right, he's Cordelia's boss, and Cordelia told him all about Angel. Angel grabs him and gets him in a headlock and says he doubts that. Then he comments with surprise that Wilson is human. He demands to know what's going on with Cordelia. Wilson won't talk. Angel beats him up. He gets him on the floor, but the other guys appear and surround them. The scene cuts to Wesley, who finds a drawing of the demon in his book, one of those big, heavy antique books. Cordelia startles him by appearing behind him. Wesley shows her the drawing. She takes the book and looks at it. He tries to reassure her that they can help her, but she closes the book and slugs him with it twice to knock him out and says he's not going to hurt her babies. This was the last major plot turn. So that turn usually grows from the midpoint, spins the story in another new direction, and raises the stakes. And typically, it should be something your protagonist chooses to do in the beginning of a story. The protagonist is often driven forward by these events, the events that start the story, and often the first plot turn spins the protagonist and they are reacting and dealing with it. Around the midpoint, the protagonist starts being more active, makes that choice, makes that commitment, or even if they suffer that reversal, they are being more proactive in how they deal with it. The protagonist should drive the story through the second half. This is tricky when you have a story where the protagonist is being controlled by something or someone else. And here, Cordelia, she knocks Wesley out, but it's very clear at this point that this is not Cordelia making the choice, that she is being driven by either this demon somehow from afar or by these offspring. It is a well-foreshadowed move because we have those questions from Cordelia. Are they healthy? Her comment about even if they're not human, they could be good. So we know she's feeling protective, but until she knocks Wesley out, we don't know how far she'll go. Now we know that she is willing to hurt her friends. There were some listener comments during the break. One from Charity on Instagram was in response to the New Year's, pre-New Year's episode about my favorite Buffy characters, and Charity shared their list: 10 Cordelia, 9 Anya, 8 Andrew, 7 Willow, 6 Giles, 5 Spike, 4 Oz, 3 Angel, 2 Xander, and 1 Buffy. And I so love this list because Charity and I intersect on Buffy as number 1. We both include Cordelia, Giles, Spike, Willow. However, I am sure I didn't put Xander in, and Charity has Xander at number 2. And I think this just speaks to what a fantastic show Buffy is and how well drawn the characters are, because different characters can speak to different people. And I will say, while Xander, I think I said this in the episode, but maybe not. While he's not a favorite character of mine, he's really not my least favorite either. He is flawed, and flawed characters, well, they're all flawed. All the characters. But Xander, there's some things that are troubling about him, particularly viewed in the light of 25 years later, which is great because it means as a culture we've evolved past certain attitudes that Xander embodies. But even at the time, he's meant to be a little grating. Willow and Buffy are often exasperated with him. And that is part of what makes him so interesting because, Xander can be a little challenging, and there are reasons why he is the way he is. And ultimately, he is a really great friend to Buffy. He changes and grows throughout the series. I don't know, this makes me think I might want to do a bonus episode just about Xander. So anyway, thank you so much, Charity, for sharing your list. Then there is a comment from Melissa, a patron of the pod. She is commenting on the New Year's Eve bonus episode for patrons, which looked at not so much favorite characters, which I decided based on which ones do I like hanging out with the most, but the character arcs, the way the characters grow. And even if you have not heard that episode, I'm sure this comment will still be relevant. Melissa says, I was so happy to see this bonus episode pop up. It has made me think quite a bit about character arcs. I looked it up on Wikipedia to make sure we were on the same page with respect to definitions. Thinking about your comments about Buffy's lack of arc, she's a hero in the first episode and a hero in the final episode, which would seem to fall under the staying steadfast category of character growth. We spend 144 episodes with Buffy, typically as the main character, constantly making choices, sometimes excruciatingly difficult ones. Her choices and experiences give her wisdom she did not have at the beginning of the story, but her overall worldview doesn't change significantly. I'd be happy to hear arguments to the contrary. I could be wrong about that. Do you think this is a less strong or compelling, not exactly the same thing, type, rather than Spike's, who, while remaining himself, has a huge shift in worldview? Do you think it would have been stronger had her worldview or personality changed more? I don't think Buffy's arc would be more engaging if she changed more, but I have to think about why that is. I had actually never heard of the steadfast character arc, but I knew the concept, and I had kind of offhandedly said Buffy didn't really have an arc. And she does. As Melissa points out, she does gain wisdom. She does face extremely difficult choices. She does go through emotional changes. At the same time, her worldview, I think, does remain the same, and I think that is a big strength of the show from the beginning. Buffy is a hero. Yes, she is rejecting the call to adventure. At first, she doesn't want to be a hero. She wants a normal life. But Buffy has a very strong drive to do the right thing. That is a value for her, to do the right thing, to protect people. And because she is capable of that in a way that no one else around her is, she steps up and does it. And that does not change. There are some ups and downs. There are sometimes she grapples with that. But that remains, which is where the steadfast idea comes from. I want to look more at the steadfast character arc. I did a little bit of reading on it, and I love the idea because it really isn't correct to say that a series protagonist or a hero protagonist has no arc, but that is what a lot of writing books say. Your main character just doesn't change very much when you're doing a series, and that makes sense because you can't go through this major arc every episode. But there is an arc there. So thank you, Melissa, for pointing that out, and I'm excited to delve into it more. One more comment on the favorite characters episode. This is from Paul on YouTube. Happy to hear Tara making the list. I personally struggle with Faith, similarly to Willow and Spike. Her nearly murdering Xander in Consequences is up there among the most disturbing actions/scenes in the series, and she sexually assaults Riley in Who Are You? This is a really good point. I talked either in the favorite characters, I think in the favorite characters episode or the arcs bonus, about struggling a bit with the things that Willow does and the things that Spike does. How him being a favorite character, I really have a bit of struggle because I love Spike, and yet the assault on Buffy in season 6 is so troubling. And I don't think I did talk enough, or maybe I didn't talk at all, about Faith assaulting Xander, almost killing him, and sexually assaulting him, or at least, I guess we would say at least, yeah, she did. She was attempting to when she was strangling him. He was not a willing participant in that interaction even before she started putting her hands around his neck. And then there is Riley, who the series does not deal with at all. There's a little bit of dealing with the trauma to Xander, not much, but some. Willow remains angry at Faith about it, but Riley, it is treated more from Buffy's perspective of how could you not know that was not me, that I wasn't in my body, but it's not really addressed that Faith gets Riley to have sex with her, and he thinks it's with Buffy. He did not consent to sex with Faith. The reason that it troubles me less with Faith is because it fits her arc more. We have this arc for her. There is where she begins, a strong slayer, but we find out emotionally troubled. She has a very difficult background. She has this great joy in life and slaying that Buffy doesn't have, but she really goes off the rails and takes this very dark path. So when Faith does these things, she is at that point more or less a villain. We see her going down that path. We see her getting worse and more heedless of human life. And then we see her struggling to get back, first pushed by circumstances in a way, but we see deep in her that there is some desire to change, and Buffy sees good in her, and she makes this struggle to go back. I find Willow a little more challenging, especially Dark Willow, partly because I don't quite buy all of the arc in season 6. We do see Willow working to come back, but we don't see it quite the same way that we do with Faith. Now you have to watch the Angel episodes to see all of that, but it really fits in her arc more. And Spike, there is that issue of having a soul, not having a soul, that makes his actions a little more of a gray area morally. There is that question of, can he make the right choice? Can he grasp how bad what he's doing is? But I struggle with that because his arc in season 6, I think, is inconsistent with where he builds to in season 5. But I get that we're trying to show he is still evil. But he bothers me less than Willow, and Faith bothers me less than Spike because I think her arc is so well-built, consistent, cohesive that when she gets out of it and changes, I really buy that she is genuinely remorseful and regrets it. And I find her arc so fascinating. So I've almost done a little mini episode here on that, and I will stop there. But Paul, thank you so much for those comments and for pointing out something that often gets glossed over about Faith's actions. If you would like to comment, you can do that on YouTube, on Patreon. You can email me at buffystorypod@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Angel tells the guys at the club he's getting the picture. Their demon lord imbues them with its life force or essence, and they go out and impregnate women, creating these demon spawn, and the demon can't get his own dates. The guys get money, power, fame. One of the guys says he's just in it for the sex. While Angel talks, one of the guys gets a gun ready and shoots Angel 3 times. They are all shocked when it doesn't kill him. Instead, he vamps out and says, "I really don't like it when people shoot me." There's a big fight. Angel throws the other guys into another room. They're incapacitated. And when he's alone with a very battered Wilson, Angel says now Wilson will tell him what he needs to know. The scene cuts to an oil refinery. Cordelia walks slowly toward a central gathering place, and other women join her there. A ringing phone wakes Wesley up. It's Angel. Wesley tells him it's a hacksaw beast and that Cordelia ran off. Angel tells Wesley that the guys built a shrine in an industrial park, and that's where Cordelia's going. And he tells him about the other women, so there will be hordes of demon spawn. They figure out that the women know where to go to give birth through a sort of telepathic umbilical cord connection with the Haxel demon. If that is severed, the spawn can't survive and the women should be safe. The trouble is, the Haxel will still be there, and it is next to impossible to kill. As they talk, Angel is pulling bullets out of his torso. He has an idea and asks if Wesley can shoot straight. This scene, like some of the earlier ones, has a lot of exposition. Wesley and Angel are just exchanging information. It slows the pace, especially because some of the information we already know. There are some new things, but it is just talking things through. Likewise, Angel and Serena, it was mainly Angel just getting information. As I've talked about in other episodes, and mainly in Buffy in particular, is great at bringing exposition out through conflict, genuine conflict between the characters. We just don't have that here. And I don't know that you could, because Angel and Wesley are on the same page. And Serena and Angel more or less are too, because Serena is not happy to be pregnant. She does not want to protect these guys. So she is on the same page with him. Now, what can you do as a writer? Sometimes you need to get that exposition out. Ideally, most of it would be out earlier, but in this type of story, the protagonist or detective or whatever we want to call Angel needs to find things out throughout. He needs to get more information. He and Wesley both do. So one thing you can do is put a scene like that against a backdrop that's really interesting and that involves some movement. This is why sometimes you will see an exchange of information in the middle of a car chase, or as we saw with Angel and the guys, as part of a fight. Although there also was genuine conflict between them too, because they did not want to give the information. But if you can combine it with some sort of movement, some sort of exciting setting or interesting setting. In my detective novels, when Quill questions witnesses, it's often at some really cool restaurant, and usually they are somewhat resistant, so she has to work for that information. But I use a lot of Chicago settings. It's part of what readers tell me they love about the books, to keep it interesting when she is information gathering. The other thing you can do is the cliche, two characters are talking and there is a ticking bomb underneath the table that they don't know about, but the audience does. And here, Cordelia being about to give birth, which could kill her, is that ticking time bomb. Now, both Wesley and Angel know about it. And it would be operating when Angel's talking to Serena as well, because we already know Cordelia could give birth at any moment. For whatever reason, that just doesn't add a lot of urgency for me. Maybe it did on first watch. I recall being more engaged with this episode the first time around, and that may be part of why, because once you know how it's going to come out, the ticking time bomb isn't as compelling, which is why sometimes you can read a great suspense novel that you just page after page, you're turning pages, you can't put it down, or you're watching a movie that's got you on your edge of your seat, and you walk out of the movie and you're like, okay, yeah, it was good, but you don't think about it. You don't remember the characters particularly. That sometimes happens when you've got a great ticking time bomb, but you just don't have a lot else. I wouldn't say that's what we have here. There's certainly lots to think about. We love these characters, but it's kind of in between, and I would have liked to see some other way to get some of this exposition out. The scene cuts to the women. They're all wearing matching white gowns now, and they climb down into a large pool of what looks like oil. We're now at the climax of the episode. Wesley makes his way over, kind of sneaks over, and he tries to get Cordelia and the other women to get out of the pool. He tells them they'll die if they don't. Now, I don't know if that means if they got out of the pool, they wouldn't give birth or it would slow it down. That isn't clear, but we know they'll die if they do give birth. He also notes that the pool is the most vile smelling filth. So this must be what makes those guys' money smell. Cordelia and the women will not get out of the pool. They refuse. Cordelia says something about serving their master. We hear thundering footsteps. A giant demon appears. First, we see its feet and legs, and we can tell it's huge, and it's a little scary. Later, we will see the full demon. When you see its face, it's unintentionally comical looking. In a deep voice, before we see the whole demon, it asks who this interloper is. And Wesley says he's Wesley Wyndam-Pryce, rogue demon hunter. He's there to fight to the death, and he says, preferably yours. I do love that line. We get the sense he is stalling for time. He calls the demon a heathen and says the demon probably doesn't know the story of David and Goliath, but it fits here. Then he says he likes to get to know his opponents. Does the demon have any hobbies? At last, a giant metal canister rolls down a ramp toward Wesley. Angel follows it and says he's sorry he's late to the party, but he brought a gift. He grabs that canister. We see it is labeled liquid nitrogen. He swings it around and around and flings it hard at the demon. The demon catches it. Wesley fires a gun at the canister. The bullet hits. It explodes, so that liquid nitrogen goes all over and the demon freezes. Green light is over the pool. The women cry out, but only for a moment, and then it is over. They get out of the pool no longer pregnant. I could not see on my TV. It's a bit dark. I couldn't see if we actually see any of those demon spawn, if they kind of just burst out of the women and die, or if they just disappeared. Not clear. I am fine with not seeing it. Cordelia grabs a block and tackle off its anchor and swings it at the frozen Haxel demon, which shatters. So she strikes the final blow and says, I really hate dating. Now we're in the falling action part of the episode. It's very quick here. This is where we tie up any loose ends, resolve subplots, sometimes set up later episodes. At the office once again, Angel is getting out magazines he thinks Cordelia might like. She's been gone 2 days, but she's coming in. Wesley is straightening out her desk. She comes in looking great and very happy and very not pregnant. She just had an audition. The producer said she's his first choice and she's having dinner with him that night. And Angel says, tonight? And Wesley says, well, best to get back on the horse, I suppose, if he seems. And Cordelia says, he is so sweet. He says that all I have to do is let him impregnate me with his demon master's seed, and I've got the part. And then she tells him she appreciates their concern, but she is okay. It was an ordeal, but she got through it. And she's a lot stronger than those loser demon surrogates thought. She adds, too, that she learned something and says, I learned men are evil. Oh, wait, I knew that. I learned that LA is full of self-serving phonies. Nope, had that one down, too. Sex is bad? Angel says, we all knew that. A reference to his curse. And Cordelia says, okay, I learned that I have 2 people I trust absolutely with my life, and that part's new. Wesley tears up. He turns away, claiming it's allergies, and the episode ends. I talked about the plot during the recap. It's a pretty well put together plot. Everything that happens was foreshadowed. Nothing feels out of character here. While you could maybe have a stronger midpoint or something where Cordelia was more active or making a choice, I think my issues with the episode have less to do with plot and more to do with theme and characters. The theme that works best for me is the found family theme. Angel is referred to in the beginning as Cordelia's boss. That's how her friends know of him and how they think of him. As viewers, we get that hint right away that there is more because he is protective of Cordelia and he wants to give her date the 3rd degree. She resists. Angel specifically tells the bartender, I'm family. And this is another thing that the first time I watched, I feel like had a big emotional impact. We knew that Angel cared about Cordelia. We saw that in Room with a View. But this was such a strong statement. I remember being very moved by it. And then Wilson refers to Angel as the boss. Oh, you're Cordelia's boss. She told me all about you. And when Angel says, I doubt it, on the surface, he's talking about being a vampire. But the more significant thing that Cordelia didn't get to telling Wilson yet, presumably, is that she and Angel are really close, that it isn't just that he's her boss. Now, maybe Cordelia didn't feel that sure of that yet herself. That is something that has been evolving. But I do think there's that layer there, and I like that. The found family theme resonates for Wesley too. More and more he is integrating into the team. And by the end, he is one of those two people that Cordelia says she can count on and trust with her life. That is huge. That is why Wesley tears up, because until now, he has been very uncomfortable dropping by. We saw him at the beginning of Somnambulist, making up excuses, bringing the paper. He's hinting around. If nothing's going on, it's clear that Cordelia isn't really expecting him to stay. And this time, he's a little more comfortable walking in, but he's still asking Angel, do you want my help? And by the end, they feel much more like a team. So I really love that. Most of the episode, though, is focused on this pregnancy plot. And that's where the theme falters for me, because I don't think there is one. We've got a lot about pregnancy. We've got a procreating demon. We have Cordelia saying Wilson was nice and the sex was safe. Nonetheless, she is almost 9 months pregnant. The demon imbues these guys with its life force, and they're going out and trying to impregnate as many women as they can, which seems like a commentary on sex and reproduction and procreation, maybe LA culture, but we don't really delve into that. Cordelia tells Wesley he doesn't know what it's like to be a partner in creation, and you could be saying something significant here about being able to be pregnant, being able to create a new being, but we don't really follow that out either. The spawn are just destroyed at the end, and they have to be. That's the story. The story tells us they are unequivocally evil and dangerous, and that is part of why we have that baby hatching demon in the beginning. It's a different kind of demon, but no question it would be extremely dangerous. We know that this Haxel demon is, so clearly these are evil. We have Cordelia saying, well, just because they're not human doesn't mean they can't be good. That's a really interesting question too, because she gives the examples, Angel, Doyle. Lack of humanity in this universe doesn't always mean bad. I'll get to world building in a bit, but that is something that in the beginning in Buffy, it was a much clearer line. Demons, humans, humans good, demons, vampires bad, and that starts blurring very quickly. But I feel like even more so in Angel, you have more demons at least who might not be evil than we see in Buffy. So Cordelia has a good point, which is not ever explored further because this demon is dangerous and evil. And Angel and Wesley are so clear on that. This is part of why I struggle with who is the protagonist here, too, because this extreme state of pregnancy where Cordelia is about to give birth and the birth will kill her makes her so vulnerable and essentially makes her a victim through almost the entire episode. This is the challenge with a supernatural or forced pregnancy narrative. That is one of the themes in my Awakening supernatural thriller series. And that's why it was important to me to work really hard in constructing a protagonist who was the hero, not the victim. My character, Tara, yes, she discovers on the first page, so not spoiling anything, that she is pregnant, even though she cannot possibly be pregnant by any natural laws. And the series follows her quest to understand what this means, what to do about it, who is fighting for and against her, what she needs to do. And I don't want to analyze this story expecting from the perspective of, oh, here's the story I would rather see. So it's not that I think you can't have a supernatural pregnancy story where the woman is directly in peril almost all the time. But if that is your protagonist, it makes it a less compelling story. One of my favorites is Rosemary's Baby, quite an old story now, but if you have not read it or seen the movie, I prefer the book, but it is such a great story. And despite that, Rosemary, you could argue, is also, like Cordelia, a victim, she is very active throughout. And partly it's because in that story, when we meet her before she's pregnant, we get to know her. She has goals and hopes and things are going on and she's dealing with them. When she is first pregnant, it makes her very ill, but she is still able to do things. And this episode immediately puts Cordelia in a position where, at least physically, there is very little she can do. And then it doesn't allow her to work through those questions of, are these offspring evil? Are they bad just because they're part demon? It is just solved for her or decided for her by Angel and Wesley. Now, there's no question, the way the episode is written, that they made the correct choice, but it gives Cordelia no choice at all. And from a thematic perspective, that's also really troubling when we're talking about a pregnancy narrative. She had no choice in getting pregnant. She had no choice in ending the pregnancy. She does kill the demon at the end, so she is able to be active, but it makes it a less interesting episode. You can check out the first book in my 4-book Awakening Supernatural Thriller series free. Just go to lisalilly.com/free. That's lisalilly.com/free. And you will see where to download the first book on all the various platforms on which you might read. There were a lot of comments, too, about the awfulness of dating. Wilson saying, thank you for making me not hate dating. And then Cordelia at the end says, I hate dating. This, in a general way, obviously related to the procreation theme. And as Buffy often did, you could see this as a metaphor, the demon story being a metaphor for the challenges of relationships and dating and sex, which is a big theme as well. But again, because Cordelia, through most of it, is not making choices, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of significance here. Another sort of motif we have is people sneaking up on one another. Angel comes up behind Cordelia and startles her. He startles Wilson in the gun club. Cordelia startles Wesley. I don't know that that is a theme other than these are unexpected things or people. You don't expect that person behind you, and the episode is expecting. Cordelia didn't expect to be pregnant. I see it more as another way to provide links from one scene to another or one set of characters to another through the episode. Often that can really help tie a story or episode together. There are times I like to end, when I'm doing multiple points of view, end one scene where the last line has a particular concept or word and the next scene different characters, but picks up on that concept or word. It helps your story feel more cohesive when you are shifting from point of view to point of view, as long as it truly fits the story and does not feel artificial to your reader. Here, it doesn't hurt anything. I don't think I noticed it until this close watch, but I am not entirely sure it adds very much either. And then there are the comments on LA that it makes people feel insecure, everything's fake or everybody's fake, the kind of shady ways people find to succeed and make money. This is just commentary by the writers. I have some empathy for it. I think I have mentioned before, I lived in LA for all of 6 months. I meant to move there permanently, more or less, with my boyfriend at the time, who is an aspiring screenwriter, now is a screenwriter. He really did need to be out there and start working in the industry and making contacts. I was there to be with him. One of the things I struggled with was that feeling of everything being fake or everyone trying to sell you something. And this was so, even though I was doing temp jobs in totally unrelated industries to Hollywood, it just seemed to permeate the culture. I just felt everyone was being a salesperson, and I rarely felt like they were being genuine. Could be cultural differences. I grew up in Chicago. It's very Midwest. Most people tend to be, I would say, more straightforward than you're going to find on the West Coast. I don't know. That seems a little unfair, but it did feel out there. Maybe it was more that everyone was trying to appear more glamorous, more successful, more everything than they were. And of course, we all present our best selves at certain times. We all present different selves depending what the situation is. But it seemed extreme there. And my feeling was when I got home, some amount of relief that there was a little bit more of what you see is what you get. So I could empathize with those LA comments, although I'm sure that people who live there long term, I'm sure there are many great things about it. There are also some jealousy things. Cordelia thinks that Dennis is jealous when he's trying to protect her from Wilson, and he's not, or at least that's not his main motive. Wesley seems a bit jealous of Cordelia, and at first I was thinking it was because she's going out and having fun. But now I think his jealousy fits more with that found family theme, that what he's envying is Cordelia's clear place with Angel. She gets paid. She's a regular employee. She's there every day, and he is not. And he's asking, does Angel need help? And I do not think he's getting paid at this point. His critiques of Cordelia, comments about her being distracted, not being responsible, probably come from his feeling that she's taking for granted her position, or maybe she doesn't entirely deserve it. That's a little too far, but envy that he is still trying to figure out, can he fit in? Can he be part of this team? And she is in and seemingly blowing it off. To wind up on theme, I love that found family theme, but the episode really falters for me in that it is all about a pregnancy and doesn't grapple with the issues that raises, even in a metaphorical way, ideally in a metaphorical way in this kind of show. Moving on to character arcs, not a lot of individual character growth here. Angel does step up and say he is Cordelia's family, and I'll get to that a little more in a moment, but he doesn't personally grow and change other than perhaps to recognize he feels that way. But I suspect Angel knew that. Wesley does become a little more competent. He embeds that axe in the wall in the beginning, but all the same, he helps kill that first baby demon. Later, Cordelia knocks him out, so he's still maybe not at the top of his game, but in the end, he shoots that gun at the canister and he hits right away, so he is key. Cordelia does not grow and change here. So this is not like Room with a View where she went through this pretty major arc. Here, even in the beginning, she is pretty confident with Wilson. She's happy, at least happy-ish. She's come to terms with LA. She's able to joke about her expectations when she got there. She seems to be having a good time and adjusting. And by the end, she does say, yeah, she's stronger than those demon surrogates thought, but I think Cordelia knew that already, so I don't see her personally having a lot of growth. Where I do see growth is the arc of these three, so that's where that family issue comes back, with Wesley integrating to the team, Angel really stepping up, and Cordelia saying she can trust them both with her life. So the strongest part of the episode is that. And it matters that Doyle is mentioned, because while Wesley does not say anything about Doyle, he didn't know Doyle, he must have that sense of Doyle was an integral part of the team. Wesley is not. Obviously, the dynamics were different. Doyle had the visions and was half demon. Wesley probably feels inferior. He doesn't have visions like Cordelia does now. He's not super strong like a demon. And him integrating into the team is a very, very big deal. This got me thinking about, is the group, is the team the protagonist? All three of them are part of defeating the demon. Angel throws the canister. He's the one who has the strength to do that. Wesley fires the shot, freezes the demon. Cordelia strikes the killing blow. We don't see that all the time. We did see imparting gifts, the team working together, but Wesley was not effective in that. Cordelia was very limited in what she could do. She is in this one as well, but it felt more disconnected, more haphazard. Here, it went so well at the very end. They really worked together, and this is a very big thing. When we look at who is the protagonist, I look at who's the main point of view character. And that is where I started struggling with who the protagonist was, because in the beginning, we see a fair amount of Cordelia. The first quarter of the episode, almost a third, we do see a lot of Cordelia, but we do see Wesley's point of view, Angel's as well. We see Cordelia through their eyes. And as the episode continues, more often, when Cordelia is on screen, we are seeing her largely from Wesley's perspective, or at least as an audience, we are more in sympathy with Wesley's perspective. Cordelia very early, well, I guess as we near the midpoint, starts seeming more and more like these offspring are really influencing her, and we find out later there's that telepathic link. So we're seeing Cordelia a little more from outside. And then the second half of the episode, we see more and more of Angel and Wesley. And even before the midpoint, we see Angel questioning the bartender, questioning Serena. This bleeds into the second prong of analysis, which is who is actively pursuing a goal. Cordelia isn't really actively pursuing a goal. In the beginning, yes, she wants to go out on a date. She wants to connect with Wilson. So there is that. Once she is pregnant, she is carried along and reacting. Yes, she wants to live, but that changes when there's this connection and these offspring influencing her. They become more important. So she isn't really actively pursuing a goal until the very end when she's not pregnant anymore and she kills the demon. Angel, in the beginning, there is not much for him to do when she's out on her date. He and Wesley kill that other demon. But once Cordelia is missing or hasn't shown up for work, now he is going to find out what's going on with Cordelia, and then he's going to help her. So he is very active from that point on, as is Wesley. So Wesley and Angel both are more actively pursuing goals than Cordelia. Cordelia clearly has the most at stake, her life. Wesley has a lot emotionally at stake. He wants to integrate in the team. Angel has a lot at stake because he says she is family. We know from previous episodes how devastated he would be to have another loss. But we don't see that as strongly as we did in, say, Parting Gifts when Cordelia was being put up at that auction and they were going to harvest her eyes and kill her. So Cordelia has the most at stake. This makes it really tough because probably she would have to be the protagonist, but because she is not active, the pacing falters and the episode doesn't feel as strong. This is another reason I think the aim was for the group to be the protagonist, because the point of view shifts around, who is active shifts around, and they work together at the end. The problem with the group as protagonist is exactly what you see here. It can end up not feeling like a strong an episode because you don't have one protagonist driving it. Typically, if the group is your protagonist, that works best for a series, and you have one main character who is most often the leader, or at least the one whose point of view we see through, who's the most active, and then you can have certain episodes where someone else is being the team, standing in for the team. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does that really, really well. For the most part, though, having more than one protagonist is very, very challenging. I'm not saying you should never do it, but it is really tricky, and it's usually better to focus on one character. I am at world building. It's very consistent with the Buffy verse. We have Angel needing that invitation in, not being able to see his reflection. He can be shot. It doesn't hurt him that much. One thing slightly different but consistent with Angel is that Cordelia, as in some previous episodes, seems much older than 18 or 19. She is in this club that is clearly for 21 and over. There's nothing suggesting she had any trouble getting in, and she is dressed very sophisticated, looks very much like a woman in her mid-20s. I did talk about this more in the bonus episode, The Age of Cordelia, so if you're a patron and haven't listened to that yet, you might want to check that out. We haven't heard of procreating demons before from Buffy, but we always are hearing about new and different kinds of demons, so that fits the Buffyverse. The only thing that maybe expands or changes a little is, as in some other episodes, you definitely get the feeling that demons take more of a part in life in LA than they do in Sunnydale. In Sunnydale, they more so have their own culture, their own bars they go to. They try to stay out of the Slayer's way. Usually here, they do seem to integrate seamlessly in society, and Serena comments on that. She knew something wasn't right. The money smelled weird, but so many things are off in LA, you stop asking questions. So you get the feeling, yes, demons are a lot more pervasive. You're probably running into them whether you know it or not. Consistent with Angel, little bit of an expansion from Buffy. Now we're at my rating. I've got to say I really struggled with this. I looked back at ratings of some of the other episodes. I definitely like this better than, say, I Fall to Pieces. And yet, I don't know that I'm any more excited about the idea of rewatching Expecting than I Fall to Pieces. I suppose a little more, just because I like Cordelia, I like Wesley, I do love him integrating into the team more. And this really goes in world building, but this was a very important episode in terms of Wesley becoming part of the team. This signals that he is going to stick around. He is one of Cordelia's two people she trusts with her life. Now we know Wesley didn't just pop in for a few episodes and he's going to go off and be a rogue demon hunter again. We suspected that already, but this certainly makes that far more likely, and it is key to building Angel's world that he, Wesley, and Cordelia are much more in sync now. And that is part of why I do rate the episode a bit higher than I would if I were looking at it only as a standalone story. Then the challenges with Cordelia not being active, being mainly a victim, and the lack of dealing with some of the thematic elements like the pregnancy and the procreation questions would bring it down more. So all of that, I rate it at a 6 on a scale of 0 to 10. I have 6 with a question mark. First time I watched it, I might have rated it higher. I think I probably would have. I would have felt more suspense. I would have been more excited just to see Wesley more, to see the three of them bonding. If you like, let me know what you think. I would love to hear if you loved this episode, hated this episode, were meh about this episode. I'm very curious how it went over. That is it for Expecting. Thank you so much for listening. Come back next time for Season 1, Episode 12 of Angel, She, where Angel clashes with a woman warrior from another world who is fighting to save the enslaved women of her homeland. You can find back episodes of Buffy and the Art of Story, as well as the Buffy and the Art of Story books and all my fiction at lisalily.com. To support the podcast, hear extra bonus content, and get each regular episode a few days early, join the Patreon community at patreon.com/Lisa M. Lilly. That's Lisa, M as in Marie, Lilly. Music for this episode was written and performed by Robert Newcastle. Buffy and the Art of Story is a production of Spiny Woman, LLC. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved.